All right. Personality chapter. Personality is explained as the enduring pattern of distinctive thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that characterize the way an individual adapts to the world. There are several different perspectives that we will discuss as we move throughout this chapter. Collectivist and individualistic cultures here are what we see across different continents and countries throughout the world. We here in the United States are an individualistic culture versus a lot of Asian areas, such as China, are a collectivist culture. Sigmund Freud developed psychoanalysis. The psychodynamic perspective sees personality as being primarily unconscious and is developing in stages. This perspective emphasizes how early experiences with parents are important in sculpting an individual's personality. Freud believed that anything pleasurable involves sex. Freud developed what is known as psychoanalysis, which was his approach to personality. He developed this approach through his work with patients dealing with hysteria. This is described as physical symptoms without any physical cause. Freud believed hysterical symptoms were overdetermined or had many causes in the unconscious. Right. Another part of Freud's psychoanalytic theory is his psychosexual stages of development. The 5 stages begin with the oral stage, from birth to 18 months. The infant's pleasure center is around the mouth. Chewing, sucking, and biting are sources of pleasure. The anal stage occurs from 18 to 36 months of age. The child's pleasure is centered around the anus, urethra, and the eliminative functions that are associated with these areas. The phallic stage occurs between 3 and 6 years of age. Pleasure in this stage focuses on the genitals as the child discovers self-stimulation. The Oedipus complex occurs during this stage. It is the intense desire for a boy to replace his father and enjoy the affections of his mother. For girls, we call it the Electra complex, which is a desire for a daughter to replace the mother and enjoy the affection of the father. Castration anxiety also occurs during this stage and is the intense fear in a boy of being mutilated by his father. In Freud's view, girls were considered inferior to men because girls did not have a penis. According to Freud, girls experience penis envy. The latency period occurs between 6 years of age and puberty. After the stressful time of the phallic stage, the child represses all interest in sexuality. This is the only time in life, according to Freud, that anything sexual is not driving us. The genital stage occurs between adolescence and adulthood, and it's the time of sexual reawakening. This stage starts when puberty begins. The source of sexual pleasure comes from outside the family. Freud believed that an individual could become fixated at any one of these stages if they under or overindulged during that time. For example, somebody that's fixated at the oral stage of development as an adult might bite their nails, smoke, chew on a pen, those types of things. Freud had many critics during his time and after. They believed his thoughts on sexuality, early experiences, social factors, and the unconscious mind were misguided. Some criticisms was that sexuality is not the pervasive force behind personality. The first 5 years of life are not as powerful in shaping adult personality. The ego and conscious thought processes, they play dominant roles in personality, and the sociocultural factors are more important than Freud believed. Horney's sociocultural approach argued that previous research about how women function was limited by the fact that those that described women were men. She argued against penis envy and said that both sexes envy the attributes of the other. She argued that there was a need for security, not sex, and that this need was the prime motive in human existence. Jung's analytical theory, the collective unconscious, is the impersonal deepest layer of the unconscious mind. In this theory, impersonal means that it is the same across each person. Archetypes are emotionally laden ideas and images that have a rich and symbolic meaning for people. Two of the main archetypes are the anima, which is a woman, and the animus, which is a man. Adler's individual psychology is when people are motivated by purposes and goals. It is perfection, not pleasure, that is the key motivator. He believed that the social factors were more important than sexual motivation in shaping personality. Part of Freud's psychoanalytic theory is the id, ego, and superego. The id is instincts and an individual's reservoir of psychic energy. The id is unconscious. It works on the pleasure principle, which works on immediate gratification and states that individuals seek pleasure and avoid pain. The id wants what it wants, regardless of what the outcome may be. The ego part of Freud's psychoanalytic theory deals with the demands of reality. It tries to bring an individual pleasure within the norms of reality. This is known as the reality principle. It is partially conscious. Freud has an iceberg, and in the iceberg, the little tip of the iceberg that's above the water represents part of the superego as well as the ego. And then at the waterline, you see more of the ego, more of the superego, and the id is completely underwater, meaning that it's completely in the unconscious stage. The ego tries to listen to both sides, the id and the superego, but ultimately tries to balance both and come to some kind of conclusion without ultimately giving into the id or just giving into the superego. So it looks for that balance between the two. The superego is the moral side, the right side, when it comes to personality. It's what people refer to as their conscience. It considers whether the id's impulses can be satisfied in normal terms, and it does not consider the reality of it. So you guys have seen the cartoon Tom and Jerry before, where the little angel and the devil pop up on the shoulders. So when the devil pops up, it's the id giving in all the time to the pleasure part. The angel represents the superego, so doing what's right, doing what's morally sound. And then the ego is either Tom or Jerry in the middle, which has to determine the right path to take based on what the id and superego are saying. Over the next several slides, you will see examples of each of these types of defense mechanisms by Freud. Defense mechanisms are strategies used to resolve conflicts among the demands for reality, the wishes of the id, and the constraints of the superego. They reduce anxiety by unconsciously distorting reality. Displacement means directing unacceptable impulses at a less threatening target, versus repression is one of the most powerful defense mechanisms because it pushes unacceptable id impulses out of awareness and back into the unconscious mind. All of these defense mechanisms are unconscious, and when used in moderation, they are not necessarily unhealthy. Defense mechanisms have been used to explain prejudice, such as projection involves seeing in others the impulses a person fears in him or herself. So read through the next several slides and you will see different examples that will help you understand each of these defense mechanisms. The next few slides go through the big five here, acronym as ocean or canoe to break it down. So with the big five personality theory, the big five factors of personality are used to describe individuals. Neuroticism is feeling negative emotions more often than positive. Extroverts are more likely to be social. Openness is related to higher IQs, liberal values, interest in art and culture, and creative pursuits. This is often the most difficult trait to understand, and most recently has been linked to living longer. Agreeableness is related to generosity. In online dating profiles, it is negatively related to lying about oneself. Conscientiousness is related to healthy behaviors and longevity. It is a key factor in various life domains. Performance in school and work, higher quality friendships, and higher levels of religious faith have all been associated with conscientiousness. Gordon Allport, known as the father of the personality theory, developed something called a trait theory. Trait theories state that personality consists of broad and enduring dispositions that can tend to lead to characteristic responses. People can be described in the way that they behave. Gordon Allport believed that to understand healthy people, the focus must be on their lives in the present, not on their childhood experiences, as Freud believed. He believed that the study of personality should focus on healthy, well-adjusted individuals. In defining personality, Allport believed that it should stress the uniqueness of all individuals and their capacity to adapt to the environment. He used a lexical approach, which was based on the idea that if a trait was important to an individual in real life, then it ought to be represented in the natural language individuals use to talk about each other. Factor analysis is a statistical procedure that allows researchers to identify which traits go together. Factor analysis relies on scientists to interpret factors and make some decisions about ways to explain the data. The five-factor model grew from these decisions. Carl Jung is another theorist here for personality. And with his theory, his idea of the personal unconscious is comparable to the unconscious that Freud and other psychoanalysts referred to. To him, it is personal as opposed to the collective unconscious, which is shared amongst all persons. The personal unconscious contains memories which are unaware we still possess, often as a result of repression. As we exist in a conscious state, we do not have direct access to our personal unconscious, but it emerges in our dreams or hypnotic state of regression. Rather than being born as a tabula rasa or blank slate, such as John Locke believed, he proposed that we are each born with a collective unconscious. This contains a set of shared memories and ideas, which we can all identify with, regardless of the culture that we were born into or time period in which we live. We cannot communicate through the collective unconscious, but we recognize some of the same ideas innately, including archetypes. For example, many cultures have cultivated similar myths independently of one another, which features similar characters and themes, such as the creation of the universe. He also noted with the collective unconscious, there exists a number of archetypes which we can all recognize. An archetype is the model of an image or person or role, and includes the mother figure, father, wise old man, and clown joker, amongst others. The mother figure, for example, has caring qualities. She's dependable and compassionate. We all hold similar ideas of the mother figure, and we see her across cultures and in our language, such as the term Mother Nature. Archetypes are often incarnated as characters in myths, novels, and films. Distinct from our inner self, we have the persona. He noted that we have a persona and identity in which we wish to project to others. He used the Latin term which can refer to a person's personality, the mask of an actor, intentionally, as the persona can be constructed from archetypes in the collective unconscious, or can be influenced by ideas of social roles in society. For example, a father may adopt traits which he considers to be typical of a father, serious or disciplining, for example, rather than those which reflect his actual personality. Maslow is part of the humanistic perspectives. He believed that humanistic psychology neither dealt with Freudian drives nor with the stimulus response principles of behaviorism. He believed that motivation was set up in a hierarchy of needs, and at the top of those needs was the need for self-actualization. Self-actualization is the motivation to develop one's full potential as a human being. According to Maslow, people who have achieved self-actualization would be tolerant of others, have a gentle sense of humor, and be likely to pursue the greater good. Maslow believed that only 2% of the population ever reached self-actualization. You have to start at the bottom of the pyramid with the physiological. Once these basic needs are met, such as having a safe place to live, having your basic food, water, just the basic necessities in life, then you could move up to the safety. Once you secured employment, had good relationships with your family, health, then you can move up to love and belonging. Here you have to have be in touch with your family. So if there's any kind of family squabbling or fighting within families, you wouldn't be able to move past this stage. You have to have good relationships with your friends, sexual intimacy, and then you can go to esteem. So esteem is not just about having respect towards yourself, but others respecting you as well. And then once you mastered that, you can go up to self-actualization, which is morality, creativity, good problem solving, no prejudices. So we basically go up and down these all throughout life. It's not that we, master them all and then stay there, but, somebody might be at the esteem level, and then with our current predicament and this whole pandemic that we're facing, they lose their job. And so now they're stuck back at the safety until they secure that employment again and can build their way up. So we're up and down this entire pyramid all throughout our lives. Carl Rogers is another humanistic perspective. Rogers' studies led the way for contemporary studies of self-esteem, personal growth, and self-determination. He believed that most people have difficulty accepting their own true positive feelings. He believed that all people are born with goodness in them, but as they grow up, the people around them condition them to move away from their genuine feelings. To explain unhappiness, he created unconditional positive regard. It's what Rogers referred to as the term for accepting, valuing, and being positive toward another person, regardless of the person's behavior. Oftentimes, others value us only when we behave in particular ways, called conditions of worth. Conditions of worth can become part of our self-concept, our conscious representation of who we are and who we wish to become. A central theme in Rogers' view was that of a self-concept, which is an individual's overall perception and assessment of his or her abilities, behavior, and personality. Rogers stated that there's a difference between the real self, who is the self resulting from experiences, and the ideal self, who is the self we would like to be. He tried to promote optimal functioning. Having empathy means being a sensitive listener and understanding another person's true feelings. Research supports the notion that an enduring, stable sense of self-esteem is more likely to emerge if we feel good about ourselves without having to live up to external standards. This is exemplified through unconditioned positive regard. Being genuine means being open with our feelings and dropping any pretenses or facades that we might have. We practice person-centered therapy today as a result of Rogers' work. In addition to the humanistic perspective, Humanistic psychologists brought awareness to the way individuals perceive themselves and the world around them, and that's the key element in personality. Some psychologists believe that the humanistic perspective is too optimistic about human nature and overestimates the freedom and rationality of humans. Henry Murray came up with the term personality to refer to the study of the whole person. He believed that in order to understand an individual, the individual's history had to be understood. During World War II, he was asked to develop a psychological profile of Adolf Hitler. This began what is currently used as criminal profiling. Murray's most impact on contemporary psychology occurred in his approach to motivation. He believed that most people were unaware of their motives. Murray and Morgan developed the TAT, or thematic apperception test. These three unconscious needs have been the focus of current research: the need for achievement, the need for affiliation, and the need for power. Dan McAdams created this life story approach to identity. This says that all individuals have their own life story that is full of ups and downs. The stories represent memories that make individuals who they are. A psychobiography is a type of inquiry in which personality psychologists attempt to apply personality theory to one person's life. Walter Mischel examined the research on trait prediction of behavior and found something missing. He concluded that there was no evidence for cross-situational consistency in behavior. He believed that personality often changes according to a given situation. His view is often called situationism, which means that personality and behavior often vary considerably from one context to another. The question is not whether personality predicts behavior, but how and when it does, so often in a combination with situational factors. Individuals select which situation they are in. Research findings suggest that the more limited a trait is, the more likely it will predict behavior. Some people are consistent on some traits, while others are consistent on different traits, and personality traits exert stronger influences when situational factors are less powerful.